law, the charter schools were only allowed to serve poor communities that were mostly African American because they saw it as a way to hopefully jumpstart and help fuel some of the innovation. After 2011, though, the charter schools are able to serve all types of students. So now you'll see some of the charter schools that are purposely trying to diversify the student body, such as Valor Collegiate over in Nashville. They make sure they don't have a majority of students of need, a majority of any one racial group. So yes, you're right. Up until about 2011, that's just where they were by law required to be placed. And also just say that's where a lot of the schools of need have been. So many of these school leaders have chosen to go into neighborhoods that either have been neglected or have been struggling, and some of the districts have asked those charter schools to work with them to help turn those schools around.
I understand that, but the prior conversation we had, there's a social component to how our children learn, and segregation is where not we ought to be for a learning experience, because the world, these young people have to go out into the world, and they should know at an early age how to interact with other people. So I have.
We agree, ma'am. We agree. I will say the charter schools are not creating segregation. They're going to neighborhoods that are already segregated.
Yeah.
And many of our charter schools are trying to make sure that the students are engaging in other environments and opportunities that usually wouldn't be brought to them. You've got some of the schools bringing the students to rugby competitions, letting them travel abroad, sending them up to New England to engage in summer programming. So we agree they need to be able to interact with people of different groups. Yes, ma'am.
Forgive me if you answered it while I was roaming around trying to get seats, but I think we're at capacity in this room. So I didn't hear all your presentation. So if I'm asking you a question that you already spoke to, I'll just maybe try to catch you. Just say it was in your presentation. But on regulation, I'm really interested. I have 3 quick questions. Are your board members? I suppose you call them board members. Are they selected or elected publicly, and what is that process? And then secondly, I'd like to know if your regulation, I don't know, Tennessee charter schools might be regulated more than others. You are, so don't bother that, you probably already said it. But the third thing is discipline. How do you discipline your students? And then do you counsel some of them out? And if you do, what happens to the money that came with that student? Because the student goes back to public school.
Yes, ma'am. The board members are not elected. They're selected by the school members and the school administration. They are required to have a parent representative, at least one, on that board. And they are local members of the community of various professions. It's not a corporate board, it's a community board. And it allows for the school leader and the teachers to have a sounding board and kind of a checkpoint to say, hey, is this working for our students? Let's check with our board. They provide guidance and resources to the school. So it's actually a very advantageous layer that has been added to the schools, since those schools are also accountable to the elected school board, the traditional school board that's elected. Discipline. I don't want to misquote numbers on the discipline. It's an issue across the board for traditional and charter schools, although we have in some of the traditional schools very great things are happening. In some of the charter schools, great things are happening with restorative justice and lower discipline rates. Some of the schools have 0% expulsions. Others have higher rates. So that's something that as a sector nationally is being looked at. How do we make sure that we are treating students with respect and their families as well? And how do we make sure we're keeping kids in school and not perpetuating a prison pipeline? But that's something that's not specific to the charter schools. It's something that we are wanting to work with our traditional school partners with to make sure that all the public school students are kept in school and treated respectfully.
But if you expel a student, do you send the money back to the public schools?
I don't want to misspeak, but I can get you that information afterwards. I believe it's prorated, but please don't quote me on that.
Thank you. Give Maya another round of applause. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. You see, I'm trying to move.
Thank you for your presentation. I noticed on your map the areas where you had charter school. What percentage of your student populations are, would you, if you know it, are African American?
With our students, we have actually, I do have those numbers for you. Sorry. All right, so we have, in our charter schools, about 84% of those students are economically disadvantaged, about 4% are English language learners, 11% are special ed, and over 80+% of those students are students of color. And specifically in Memphis, they're mainly African American.
Okay. Do you know why you don't have charter schools in high wealth areas, or why you don't have a larger percentage of the students as white?
She answered that question.
In the rural areas?
That was already asked? Okay, I was pulled out the room, so.
Yes, she answered.
But in rural areas, I mean, I noticed it's in the population centers.
I'm sorry. So is the question about why aren't there charter schools in rural areas?
We're outside of the population centers. I noticed it was Memphis, Nashville, one in Chattanooga, and I think Knoxville. Was there a
Yeah.
reason why they're not in Dyersburg and Bells and Halls and other areas across the state?
We get calls from cities all across the state that are looking to launch charter schools. It really comes down to what does that district need? What do they have the capacity to support? What's their knowledge about charter schools? So there's not a law or anything that says charter schools can't go there, but serving rural communities is something that has been a struggle for Tennessee as a state, period. It's something that's now being brought to the forefront in more recent conversations. Most of our conversations at Reform have all focused on urban education. It's been a neglected group, and that's not a charter school issue. Charter schools will be happy to go where they're needed and support traditional schools, but again, it comes down to rural education has not been something that as a state Tennessee has focused on.
So have you all tracked enrollment from the 9th grade through the 12th grade and determined what percentage of your students stay in the charter school setting?
The percentage I gave earlier, I'm not sure if that's from 9th grade through 12th grade, but the charter schools have about 11% of their students exit versus traditional schools are about 13%. So that's why I mentioned earlier, students are staying in charter schools at about the same rate as they stay in traditional schools.
All right. And in terms of selection for your sites, how do you select your facilities, and how do you determine what rate to pay for your facilities?
I smile. All the charter people in the room probably are thinking about these facilities. Charter schools here in Tennessee have to pay for their own facilities. They have to fundraise the money to find buildings, or they have to pay rent to the district or to municipalities. They find buildings based on the neighborhoods that they want to launch their schools in. They determine what neighborhoods they want to launch in based on community input. They knock on doors, they talk to community members and committees to find out if they would like them to be there, if they're interested in the model that they are serving. And in some instances, they may talk to the district, and the district may say, we have a need in this particular area.
Do they rent from for-profit entities?
They rent from commercial.
Yes.
Some of them have to rent from commercial because they're not given free facilities as public schools, which has been a struggle for charter schools here in Tennessee.
Are they required to pay fair market rate, or they pay whatever rate is they can
For
afford?
the commercial properties, they typically, I believe, are able to pay fair market rate. Some of our charter schools end up having to use 15 to 20% of their monies to cover facilities because they're not being offered free facilities or financial support as public schools for their facilities.
So for public entities, they have to negotiate commercial rental space. Are you all required with the same state bid laws requirements as the public entities?
I can't speak to that, sir. Apologies. Yes. I got a school reader back here. She says yes.
And I think it was answered earlier about the per pupil expenditure that followed a child from the traditional public schools to the charter school, and you believe it is prorated when the child goes back.
I believe so.
All right. Are you all are required to do the same reportings in terms of push-out, dropouts, expulsions as the public schools?
Yes, we report out on expulsion, suspensions, incidents, discipline incidents in the school, all the same reporting out that the traditional schools are sharing out, the public charter schools are also sharing. And most of the districts with charter schools share out a yearly report about the progress of their charter schools, including academics and disciplinary, so on, graduation rates, so on and so forth, is also reported to the state.
My final question is, you say you have community boards. How are community boards selected?
As I mentioned earlier, they work with the school administration and teachers to determine who are those community members that are really invested in that particular neighborhood, in that particular school, and it also is required to include a parent or more from that school.
So, and I said the last question, I got two more, just thought about it. Community board compared to a governing board, what's the difference?
Our community boards are our governing boards, but we also are still responsible to the elected school boards, for example, to Shelby County as well.
All right, and now this is my final question. What percentage of your teachers are certified?
All of them.
So they're required at the same,
Tennessee requires that all of our teachers are highly qualified.
at the same level as traditional public schools?
I believe so.
Okay.
And I don't know how that is for the ASD. I think it's a bit different.
I did hear you say it's different for the ASD?
I believe so. I'll let Malika speak to that, but I know that there's a requirement for teachers to be highly qualified.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Give Maya a round of applause. Excellent, excellent. Our next presenter is an old friend of mine